Joining me now is the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, Dan Loepp. Dan, it's always good to see you up here at Mackinac.
Christy, good to see you.
You know, it feels like that there is quite an energy here this year. What are you hearing about, or what are some of the larger conversations that you're taking part of that people are talking about?
I think people, first of all, we're in a good economy, which is, makes things always better.
And we've been up here at Mackinac when things have been high and things have been very low.
I chaired this conference 10 years ago. As we were going into the recession in the 08, 09.
Yeah.
And, you can feel the difference. The business community is energized. I think that when you watch the collaboration that is going on between the governor and the mayor and Brooks and Mark Hackle and even outstate, it's really different than 8 or 10 years ago. And I think the business community has a confidence that things are working well, and I think with a good economy, you're watching investments sort of going well too.
A lot of things that people are telling me and business leaders are saying, gosh, though, we need the talent. We need to be able to attract good talent to the state of Michigan in terms of being able to fill a lot of these great jobs, or take Michigan and take some of the, some of the industries in a different level, but getting that talent in there. Would you agree? Yeah,
talent is a huge issue, although from our perspective, as we're recruiting across the country, Detroit has a buzz to it now that if I go back to when I started as CEO 12 years ago, it was hard to recruit from outside of Michigan. There is a buzz now that people are intrigued with Detroit, with the region, and the talent that we're attracting at least is much, the options that we have is much, much stronger. And so I sort of look at it that we're in a much better spot today than we would have been, 6 or 7 years ago.
You're really a pillar in downtown as well, the company is, and focused on downtown development in Detroit. How would you say the city has changed in the last 2 years?
Exponentially. I think the Q line is sort of a metaphor for everything. If you think about it, because historically, we've always traveled, whether it's from Detroit or Lansing or whatever. You go to Chicago on the train, you do this, you do that. Interestingly enough now, you're going to be able to travel from Chicago across the Amtrak to Detroit, walk down the steps, get on the Q line, and pick 6 hotels that you can go to without touching a car. And to me, given with the Little Caesars Arena and all the development that's going on, what Dan Gilbert's done, this is a world-class city, and I think the mayor, rightfully so, yesterday talked about what we have to do in the neighborhoods. This is just exponentially different than 2 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, than where we've been. Do you think the Q line is going to be the jumping point for a larger transportation conversation? Because someone made the point to me yesterday, because you can actually physically see what it could be.
I think that's true. In the human nature, as you talk to people, is to say, okay, what about the extension out Woodward? And I think my understanding is everybody's talking right now. And I talked to Roger Penske last week, and Roger is on this like crazy, as well as other business leaders. And I think everybody realizes that there has to be an extent. This alone doesn't
solve it.
But that it sort of gives you the idea of that there needs to be an extension. We have to feed the needs of both Macomb and Oakland County, Washington County. I think it's doable. We had a weird election last time. It lost by less than 1%. I think it's doable.
I got to talk to you about healthcare. All right, so what's happening in Washington right now? What are your concerns about the Affordable Care Act, and what decisions are going to be made now in the Senate, and what would you like to see?
Yeah, I think that I'm very confident. I've spent a lot of time in D.C. in the last 3 months, met with our 2 senators, obviously, and then leadership in the Senate. People are very well aware of the reality now of you got to do something. But if you think of Medicare, for example, when it was passed back in the 60s. Had we, for the first 8 years of Medicare, done nothing, not fixed anything in Medicare, what would have happened? There would have been problems. Because any bill that you pass, you figure out that, well, we didn't think of this, we didn't think of that, or we should have done this or not done this. In the Affordable Care Act, nothing has been done in 7 years. And so we need to do something. I think there's probably 6 or 7 fixes. I think the House moved things along. I think the Senate is going to change things. And I'm confident that we can get something that's workable. Because the idea of pick your number, whether it's 16 million people or 22 million people, nobody wants to have people not covered.
That amount of people not
and
covered.
so I think we're going to get to a good place. It's just the sausage making process that is
which is never very pretty for anyone.
Never.
So tell me, of the 6 or 7 fixes that you'd like to see, give me your specifics.
Well, I think keeping people on their parents' coverage at 26. I think the pre-existing condition issue will go back to where it is. I'm pretty convinced of that. I think we've got to get people to the 20% or so of people that use the system. We had last year, Christy, we had 20% of our entire book, and we cover 55% of the people in Michigan would get coverage and then quit paying their bill. Well, that impacts the 80% that continuously pay their bill. That's got to get fixed. I think the subsidies, 51% of the people that we cover are in subsidies. The people that are making $30,000 a year can't afford to pay the full freight, and so we got to come up with that. But I think, as you talk to people, there's a willingness. I listened to your panel just before I came on. There's a willingness to do something, and I'm always believe in the glass being half full, and I think something is doable. Our job ultimately is to implement whatever's passed so our customers are happy. So,
talk to me a little bit about, it seems that a lot of people are complaining about the high cost of prescription drugs,
right?
And changing that. Are we ever going to see, how do we stop that? How do we tackle that?
Well, I think, first of all, if you think about it, if you go back into the 60s, nobody had prescription.
Take me back to the 60s again.
People did not have prescription drug coverage. Now it's 37% of our total cost of care, right? We've worked very, very hard about moving people to, off of name brand drugs. The biggest issue at this point is the high-end cost of what they call the boutique drugs. We went through this on Hep C the last couple of years. And so what we have to do is, our job is to manage it. I think you're going to see more and more pressure on the pharmaceuticals to deal with, do you spend 50% of your money on advertising, or do you have to deal with costs? You watch Congress in both parties. People are getting pressure from their constituents. It'll be interesting to see what plays in the next 4 or 5 years, because it's just too much of the cost of health care. I don't think we sit still.
All right, so wrapping it up, what are you looking forward to seeing today?
Well, I'm looking forward to introducing the governor. I think it's been 7 years when you think about it, which is, time flies. But I'm excited about what's going on in Michigan. Things are, when you really think, and you've been through this because you've been around a bit too, where we're at in this state and what we're doing and where the economy's at. Sure, there are issues, there are problems, but you know what? It's pretty darn good compared to where we were at.
All right, CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, Dan Loepp. It's always good to see you. Thanks for
Christy.
joining me.
Thank you.
Okay.